Hello guys and welcome to Python programming tutorials by Amulya's Academy. Today in this tutorial we'll write a Python program to take user input for list. While writing the programs, in many programs we'll take list as the input. We can take list as the input in two ways. One is you can directly take a list or you can take user input. So today we'll discuss about this, how to take user input for list. Now to take the user input for list, what we can do is first we can create an empty list like this. Next we need to add the element to the list one, right? And we need to take that element from the user. So for that I'll use the input function. So I'll take n equal to input function, which will allow us to enter the element. So I'll ask the user to enter the element like this. And next we need to add this element to list one. For that I'll use append function. So I'll write list1 dot append and n. Now one element is added to list1. Next, if I want another element in the list, then how to do that? Now again I need to take the input function. I need to ask the user to enter the element like this, and next I need to append that. Now if I want to insert another element to the list1, that is the third element, then how to do that? So for that you need to do this again. You need to take the input using input function, then you need to append that. This is the one way to take the user input for list. But as we can see, this is not the best way, because here you can see you are repeating this line again and again. Now if I want to insert 10 elements to the list one, then I need to repeat these two lines 10 times. So the program will become lengthier and also it won't look good. So instead of repeating the code, what we can do is we can use the loop. Whenever in the program, if you need to repeat piece of code for different value, then you can use loop. And here we have two loops, that is for loop and while loop, and we can write this program using both the loops. First we'll see how to write this program using for loop, and next we'll see how to write the program using while loop also. Instead of repeating this again and again, we need to include this in a loop, right? So here we'll take for loop. So now if I take for loop to write this program, then first I need to know how many elements you want to enter to the list one, and that many times we need to run for loop body. So first we need to ask the user to enter how many elements he or she want to enter to the list. Next we need to run for loop that many times, n times, and we need to take the element from the user and we need to append that. So let's write the program. In the Python file, the first step is we need to ask the user to mention how many elements he want to enter to the list. So for that I'll take a variable n and I'll use input function, and here I'll write a message. How many elements, or you can mention length of list. You can ask the user to enter the length of list. Now length of list is an integer value, right? So here we want integer input, so I need to convert the input to integer using int function, because here I am using Python 3, and in Python 3 by default this input function will take input as the string value, but here we want integer input, that's why I am using int function here. Right, the first step is done. Next I need to use the for loop, so I'll use for I in range. So here I is a variable, you can take any suitable variable here, and in the range function I need to mention how many times I need to execute the for loop body. Here in the for loop body we are writing the code to take the input from the user. How many times do I need to take the input? N times, right? That's why I need to take range as n here. So next I need to take the input from the user. So enter the element. I'll ask the user to enter the element here, and I'll store that in the variable element. Here I'm taking the string input for now. If you want, you can take int input by using int function. Next, after taking the element from the user, we need to store that in the list, right? So for that, first we need to create an empty list here like this. It is an empty list. Now I need to append the user entered element, the user input, to list one. So here use like this, list1 dot append element. Now elements are entered. So here I'll print the list like this. So let's execute this. First mention the length of list. So I'll take 5 elements. Here I'll mention 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here you can see list contains string elements because in the input it will take the input as string value by default. If you want integer input, then you need to convert the input to int like this. If you want float, you need to convert it to float. Right? In this way you can write this program. You can take the user input for list using for loop. First you need to ask the user to mention the length of the list, how many elements he wants in the list, then create an empty list, then using for loop execute these 2 lines, that is here we are taking the element and we are appending that to list 1. Using the for loop execute these 2 lines n times. That is nothing but take the user input n times. Next print the output. Alright. Next, if I want to do this using while loop, then how to do that? One way is you can take a variable here, I is equal to 0, and you can check the I is less than n, and you can increment I in the loop body. That is the one way, but I won't use that way. Let's write the program without knowing the length of list. Here in the for loop, first we need to know the length of list, right? Then we'll run this code that many times, n times. And we'll take n input and we'll append that to list 1 and we'll print the element. But if I don't know length of list, how many elements I want to insert to the list, then how to write this program? We can do that using while loop. So for that, first I'll remove this. We don't want this user input. Instead of here for loop, I'll use while loop. And in the while loop, we need to take the condition which will evaluate to true or false. If the condition becomes true, it will execute loop body. If the condition becomes false, it will come out of the loop. Now, instead of taking a condition which will evaluate to true or false, I take this condition itself as a value true. That means while loop is always true. When this condition, when here this becomes true, it will execute the loop body, right? So it won't become false in any time. That means this loop is an infinite loop now. It will execute the loop body continuously. Now, inside this, I'll take a stopping condition for while loop. That is, I'll ask the user to mention whether he want to quit or not, whether he want to add another element or whether he want to stop. So here, I'll take the input from the user. Like this, want to stop. If S, press S, otherwise press any key. I'll ask the user whether he want to stop. If yes, we need to press S, otherwise we need to press any key. And here I'll take a if condition and I'll check whether choice is equal to yes. Whether the user input is yes. If it is yes, that means he want to quit. So I'll execute break statement. So when we use break statement inside the loop body, when that line is executed, when break is executed, it will come out of the loop. This is the stopping condition for our while loop. Alright, so let's execute this. And here you can see I converted the input to int using int function. So we are taking integer element. Enter the element. I'll enter 10. So it will ask, after entering one element, it will ask want to stop. If you press yes, it will stop. If you press any other key, here I'll press enter. So it will again ask enter the element. I'll enter 20. Next again I'll press enter and I'll press 30. So now if I press yes, it will stop and it will print the list elements 10, 20, 30. Okay, so in this way you can take the user input for list. Now if I want to insert different type of element to the list, then how to do that? Here you can see, you can enter only one type of element to the list, because if I convert the input to int, then it will take all the integer element and it will insert that to list. If I take float here, it will take only float input and it will insert that to list. If I didn't take any function here, then input function by default take the input as string and it will take only string input. For example, if I remove this now, like this, here we can see we are using input function. Now if I execute this, enter the element. If I enter 10, this is an integer input, but because we didn't use any function with the input function, it will treat the input as the string value and it will take string input. Then how to solve this issue? If I want to enter different type of element to the list, then how to do that? So for that, you can use eval function, which will evaluate the string as expression. So here you can use eval like this, and if I execute this now, enter the element, I'll enter 10. So I enter A and I'll enter 3.4, and here you can see it will take integer, float and string value. But using the eval function in the program is dangerous because it has some security issues and most of the people avoid using eval in the program. Then what to use instead of eval function? You can use another function called as literal eval, which belongs to AST module. This is a module, and in that module there is a function called literal eval, which will safely evaluate an expression or string. So for that you need to import AST first, like this, and here you need to use ast.literal and eval. The function name is literal eval. Enter the element. If I enter 10, 2.3, and here you can see, right? So in this way you can insert different types of element to the list. Next, there is another way also to take the user input for list. That is, first you need to take the string input. You need to ask the user to enter the element with space. For example, if I want to enter A, B, C, D to the list, we need to enter A, space B, space C, space D. Then we need to split the string, one, and dot split, like this. And if I print list 1, if I enter A, B, C, D, here you can see list. So you can take the user input for list using the split function also. So that's it for now guys. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I will meet you in next class. Till then, take care.